Why should some people get more than £500 per week on benefits when I only earn £450 a week working 46 hours?
Why should some people... This is what happened this week, was the introduction of the cap on benefits at £500. Why should some people get over 500 when I only earn 450? So, Secretary Cameron, as what, incidentally?
I do CNC engineering.
Engineering?
CNC work on
right.
CNC machines. You probably wouldn't know what that is, but
no, I'm afraid I don't. I won't ask you, because...
Yeah.
Amanda Patel.
Well, Hector, the simple truth is it is completely unfair that people who go out to work like you take home less money than people who stay at home. Now, this is quite, it's quite controversial, this cap, but it's probably the most popular thing that this government's ever brought in. I wish they were doing it... Well, I know that Ian Duncan Smith's doing it through conviction. I'm not sure that David Cameron has embraced it for the same reason. But, you know, basically the cap's £26,000, which is the average take-home income. And you would have to be earning £35,000 a year to have that £500 in your pocket. And all I would say is there had to be a huge change, and these are huge changes, but underneath of them all is a moral argument that anyone who goes out to work should not be worse off than someone who stays at home. And there are just two simple points to make here. The benefit system is there has always been there for people who cannot look after themselves and for people who fall on hard times. It is not a lifestyle choice. And too often in this country, that's why it's become, and that's why it is so unfair to people like you.
Sarah Tether, you're part of this coalition government. Until a bit ago, you're still there, presumably supporting it. What do you think?
I mean, I think the problem with a lot of the debate around this is that it misses the human cost involved. And I know that it sounds like a large amount of money, but if you are one of my constituents living in an area with very high housing costs, you're going to face a really invidious choice when this benefit cap comes in. You will lose perhaps many hundreds of pounds, and the choice then for you is do you move a long way away? Do you move perhaps a long way out of London, away from your support network, away from where you're going to have any chance of getting work, where your children are in school? Or do you go into a much smaller property and become very acutely overcrowded? Or do you split up your family? So we have to remember what the real cost of this type of policy is. And I don't think it's going to save any money. I mean, all of the evidence suggests that it's going to save very little money. It doesn't seem to be getting people back into work. I think, in fact, it's likely to be counterproductive as people get moved a long way away from where they live and where they've previously been in work. And the danger is just that it's a political device. For me, this is about demonstrating whose side you're on, and I don't really like that type of politics.
Go back to the questioner.
If the landlords know that they get this rent from the government, so that they keep the rents high. If they know that the rents are going to be low, they're going to have to lower their rents that they charge.
Michael Howard.
Well, the question is right. Of course, Sarah's right too, that there is a human cost involved, and all change of this kind will lead to some hard cases, and that is very, very regrettable. But the truth is that, quite apart from the moral argument which Amanda put forward, which I agree with, we have to understand that as a country we are in hock, and we just can't afford to carry on as we have been carrying on.
But Michael,
we are borrowing.
This will save any money.
It will save money. It's bound to save money.
But why is it bound to save money?
It's bound to save money because people will be getting less. Let me finish. Okay. People will be getting less than they otherwise would have got. And we are in a situation where we are borrowing money, believe it or not, from countries which have a far lower standard of living than we have, which don't have any welfare at all. And it's completely unsustainable. So we've got to start living within our means. Okay. And this is one of the steps which is necessary in order to
pick up some of these points.
No, hold on a second. The figure, I'll come to Karen Finn in a moment. The figure offered is 110 million a year savings. Do you accept that figure?
I don't know whether that's absolutely right. But these figures add up. This is not the only step which the government's taking in order to reduce the welfare bill. And you have to add them all together, and we have to save money in order to start living within our...
I'll come back to you, Sarah. Let Caroline Flint come in.
The government's borrowing £245 billion more pounds than they were planning to, because their economic policies are failing and they haven't got the jobs and growth to get this country back on its feet. And in answer to Hector's question, I fundamentally believe that actually people should be better off in work than on benefits. I also believe in a benefit cap, but one that can work. And the problem is that because there are different housing costs around the country, the government have introduced this sort of standardised benefit cap that is going to cause problems. We argued that actually we should have localised benefit caps that did reflect some of the housing costs. And the truth is, particularly in London, and you make a very valid point about whether this will bring the rents down. On the front page of the Evening Standard tonight, it says that rents have gone up by 8 times in London. And the truth is, because there are so many people looking for private rented accommodation, and because we haven't got enough social homes, council homes, to put these people into, we have got a problem that is going to emerge because of this. And the government say they want to tackle idleness. Well, why are they making changes that are going to take money away from people who are actually in work and supporting them in work? It doesn't add up. They are putting through incompetent policies that actually aren't going to achieve what you want.
Are you saying the principle is right, but the execution of it is wrong?
I think the principle is right. I think the execution is wrong. I don't think it takes account of different housing costs around the country, and it doesn't solve the problem. We need to build more social homes for people. That is vital.
We certainly do, and the number of social housing units fell dramatically under the last Labour government. But I'd like to ask Caroline this question. If you support regional caps on benefits, do you support regional benefit levels to start with? Because you can't have one without the other.
No, I think there is a different issue when it comes to housing. If you look around the country, Michael, you can see that there are disparities in terms of housing costs. The ability in my constituency, for example, in Doncaster, for people on relatively low, medium incomes to buy a house is far greater opportunity than people on low, middle incomes in, say, London. So I think it needs to reflect that. And the truth is, people in work are having tax credits taken away from them. So the government can't argue that they're supporting people in work, because 2/3 of the people affected by some of those changes are working families who are trying to make ends meet and make work pay.
The problem with this one overall cap is what it does is to disentangle the link that we have at the moment that recognises that housing costs different amounts in different areas. It's the reason why housing benefit rates are different in different areas. So it doesn't make any sense.
What really confuses me about this argument is, I've lived in Britain for a long time now, more than 25 years. I've known loads of people who, through their circumstances, when their families grew or they lost their job or they got another job, they moved. They took their kids out of schools. They accepted that you don't have a God-given right to stay in the same house. And I think that your protestations and Caroline's seem to say that it's a different set of rules. This goes back to the moral argument.
It depends a little bit on
a
different
set of rules.
Where are they going to go, Amanda? Where are these people going to go? There isn't a social housing for them to go into.
We have to start
the inner city of London.
And I think it's been very courageous.
We're going to end up with no mixed communities.
We've got a lot of people in the audience wanting to speak, but Griff, your turn.
Well, I'm sitting on the edge here. And I basically agree with everybody and disagree with them all at the same time. And the problem that comes here is that we have a welfare system that has not really been sorted for quite a long time. It's been fiddled with. And we live in an unsustainable equation. The equation goes like this. Our welfare is billowing, and it was predicted at the time of the Lisbon Accord by economists who came together and said, look, Western Europe is not basically going to be able to afford what it wants to do in the way of welfare. And it will have to take some pain along the way. But what I also recognise, and what is very, very true, is that because we have left it so late, because we're now engaged in a form of tinkering, we're going to cause some real, genuine pain to people who have become reliant on a system which is so complicated that as we sit to discuss it here, we can't even find a sort of conclusion about what we're talking about. And this is the first of 20, at least 20 measures which are going to play with a really complicated welfare system. we have a situation in this country where we have encouraged people, quite rightly, to stay in higher education till the age of 21 or later, and then we retire at a relatively early age. I mean, and then we try to live, well, thanks to the National Health Service, till beyond 100.
Of course that's true.
And under those circumstances, the actual time we spend as productive people putting money into the pot is not quite working. It's not adding up.
Yeah. The woman there in the striped shirt. Yeah, striped thing, yes.
I would quite like to agree with Amanda. The thing I don't understand is why there seem to be two different rules. One if you're on benefits and one if you're working. I work. I can't afford to live in London, so guess what? I don't.
Yeah. And yes, I'm up there in white.
There's only a certain number of people in the country that the money is taken from their taxes to pay the benefits, and we can't already sort out the benefits that people are getting. So why is it that when people from abroad come into our country, they're not here for very long, before they also are receiving benefits? Now, we can't make what we've got go round with the people that we've got here already without this additional number of people coming in from outside.
All right. And hold on a second. We'll take the woman there, and then I'll come to you, Sarah. Yes?
The one point that everybody seems to have overlooked is that the vast majority of benefit recipients in this country are working people. Yeah. And what the benefit system is actually doing is it's subsidising big companies to pay starvation wages. And the solution would be to raise the minimum wage. If the minimum wage were raised to a living standard, then not only would fewer people claim benefits, but there would be greater tax revenue as well.
And are you in favour, in that context, of a cap on welfare payments?
No, I don't think it's the answer.
Michael Howard, what do you say to the idea of raising the minimum wage?
Well, it sounds very attractive in principle, but there would be many companies that simply couldn't afford to pay a higher minimum wage, and they would then start laying people off. They might even go out of business. And the result might be that you would actually have fewer people in work than you started off with. And that would not be what you want, and it certainly wouldn't be what I want.
Isn't that the same argument the Tories used when it was first introduced?
And that it all depends on the level at which you fix the minimum wage. Exactly. And
£50 an hour.
And if you increase it, you may well get the kind of consequence.
But it is the argument you used when the minimum wage first came in. You said all hell will be let loose, jobs will disappear,
depending on the level.
Well, at the level it was fixed, did they disappear? No.
But
it was fixed at a low level.
But the answer to this is also about access to jobs. There's something like 1.5 million people working part-time who are desperate to work full-time, and they really do want to do that, but the jobs are not there. Okay. And the truth is that unemployment has gone up again in the figures this week. Unemployment is higher today than it was in 2010, and Osborne and Cameron have to listen to organisations like the IMF and others, who say you have to do something to tackle growth, because the way out of this is through jobs and growth and giving people the chance to earn more.
All right, let's just come back to the question Hector asked originally. The man there in the very back row, you, sir.
The majority of welfare goes on pensions, not on benefits. Shouldn't we be focusing on pensions instead? And to the lady talking about immigrants claiming benefits, the majority of immigrants, the claim rate amongst immigrants is much lower of benefits than it is amongst the general population.
So are you saying you'd favour a cut in state pensions as a way of reducing the welfare bill?
I think we're focusing on the wrong thing by focusing on welfare in a divisive campaign by the Conservatives, when the whole point is that we should be focusing on pensions, but we won't, because Cameron's made a promise about not cutting pensions, because that's where his voter base is.
But you would like to see pensions cut?
I think it has to be put on the table. Pensions have to be put on the table instead of this divisive attack on